Everyone is asking the wrong question. Ever since episode 4 aired, fans have been debating why Damon lied to Rhaenyra. Was he trying to manipulate her? Was he hiding another secret? Had he finally decided that keeping information from his own queen was worth the risk? But none of those questions get to the heart of what actually happened. The real mystery isn't why Damon lied. The real mystery is why Damon believed the truth was too dangerous for Rhaenyra to know. Because Daemon Targaryen has never been afraid of telling people exactly what he thinks. He's challenged kings, ignored councils, and openly defied anyone who stood in his way. So if a man like Daemon suddenly chooses deception over confrontation, there has to be a reason powerful enough to outweigh his loyalty to his queen. And I think that reason has a name: Rhaena Targaryen. What if Daemon's biggest lie wasn't an act of betrayal at all? What if it was the first truly selfless decision he's ever made? Because if this theory is right, Daemon isn't hiding the truth from Rhaenyra to gain more power. He's hiding it because he finally realizes his daughter has become one of the most valuable people in all of Westeros, and revealing the truth now could paint a target on her back before she's ready to defend herself. Stick around until the end, because once we connect Daemon's lie, Sheepstealer's decision in Rhaena's future, you'll see why this single moment could quietly create one of House Targaryen's greatest heroes. Before we dive in, do me one quick favor.
Have you not betrayed your queen?
If Vhagar hasn't already burned YouTube's algorithm to the ground and Caraxes hasn't scared away the subscribe button, go ahead and click it. It's completely free, it helps the channel grow, and unlike a meeting of the small council, it only takes 1 second and doesn't end with someone storming out of the room. And make sure you watch this video all the way to the end. Every clue builds toward one final conclusion, and if you leave halfway through, you'll miss the one detail that completely changes Daemon's decision from an act of deception into one of protection.
What is this?
The one who rode Sheepstealer.
Now let's quickly recap where the story stands. The Dance of the Dragons has reached the point where every decision carries enormous consequences. Dragons are no longer just symbols of House Targaryen. They're the greatest weapons in the realm. Every rider matters. Every alliance matters. Every secret matters. Rhaenyra is fighting to secure her claim, while the Greens continue strengthening theirs. And both sides know that the balance of power can shift with a single dragon. That's exactly why the events surrounding Rhaena and Sheepstealer deserve far more attention than they've received. On the surface, it looks like another exciting dragon moment. But underneath that spectacle lies a political earthquake that could reshape the rest of the war.
I need asylum, my lady. I had nowhere else to go.
Let's talk about Rhaena for a moment. Ever since House of the Dragon introduced her, she's carried an emotional burden that almost no other Targaryen has experienced. She grew up surrounded by dragons, yet remained without one herself. In a family where dragons are often treated as proof of destiny, that absence wasn't just disappointing, it was deeply personal. While others formed legendary bonds with creatures that defined their identities, Rhaena was left wondering where she belonged. The show has quietly explored that loneliness without constantly drawing attention to it. Every glance toward another dragon, every reminder of what she lacked, slowly built a character searching for purpose in a family where greatness often arrives on dragonback. That's why Sheepstealer is so important. This isn't simply the story of a rider finally finding a dragon. It's the story of a dragon making a choice. We sometimes forget that dragon bonds in George R.R. Martin's world are never completely one-sided. Riders don't simply pick dragons the way knights choose horses. Time and time again, the lore reminds us that dragons possess instincts, personalities, and a mysterious intelligence that humans still don't fully understand. Some reject experienced riders. Others refuse every attempt to tame them. Wild dragons especially answer to no king, no queen, and no political ambition. Sheepstealer has survived by avoiding people, living on his own terms, and trusting almost no one. For a creature like that to accept Rhaena carries enormous significance. Most viewers see that moment as the reward for Rhaena's perseverance, and emotionally, that's absolutely true. But politically, it's something much bigger. A wild dragon accepting a rider changes the conversation entirely. It proves that dragons still choose according to rules that human beings cannot fully explain. They aren't simply inherited. They aren't simply assigned. Something deeper is happening whenever a true bond is formed. And if anyone understands that better than Rhaenyra, it's Damon. Remember who Damon is. Before he became a husband, a prince, or a commander, he was a dragon rider. His bond with Caraxes isn't just military power, it's part of his identity. Damon has spent his entire life around dragons. He understands their behavior better than almost anyone alive. He knows they aren't mindless beasts waiting for orders. They're intelligent, unpredictable, and capable of sensing qualities in people that others overlook. So when news reaches him that Sheepstealer has accepted Rhaena, I don't believe Damon sees an ordinary victory. I think he sees confirmation of something he's suspected for a long time, that his daughter possesses a strength the rest of the realm has failed to recognize. And that's where everything changes. Because if Damon believes Sheepstealer didn't simply accept a rider but chose this rider for a reason, then Rhaena immediately becomes far more than another member of the royal family. She becomes an unpredictable factor in a war where predictability is everything. The Greens will see another dragon they need to eliminate. The Blacks will see another dragon they need to deploy. Lords throughout Westeros will see another political prize whose loyalty could influence the future of the Iron Throne. The moment Rhaena's bond becomes common knowledge, she stops being overlooked, she becomes a target. Now ask yourself something. If you're Daemon Targaryen, a man who has spent his entire life watching ambitious nobles turn family members into political weapons, would you announce that your daughter has just become one of the most strategically valuable people in the Seven Kingdoms? Or would you do everything possible to keep that information contained until she has the experience to survive the storm that's coming? I think we already know Daemon's answer. Because for perhaps the first time in his life, Daemon isn't thinking like a warrior. He's thinking like a father. The more you think about Daemon's decision, the less it resembles the actions of a man plotting against his queen. Instead, it begins to look like the actions of someone who has finally learned from a lifetime of mistakes. One of Daemon's greatest flaws has always been his belief that strength alone can solve every problem. Whenever he's challenged, his instinct is to fight. Whenever he's cornered, he lashes out. Whenever politics become too complicated, he reaches for the simplest solution, and that solution usually has scales and wings. But age, war, and loss have changed him in ways he probably never expected. He's watched his brother die. He's seen his family fracture. He's witnessed children become casualties in a conflict they never chose. By episode 4, Daemon understands something his younger self never could. Not every battle is won by charging into the sky on Dragonback. Sometimes the smartest move is making sure the battle never reaches the people you love. That alone gives his lie a completely different meaning. Now think about Rhaenyra's position. She isn't just a mother anymore. She's a queen fighting for the Iron Throne, and every decision she makes has to serve the war effort. That's not a criticism of her character. It's simply the reality of leadership during the Dance of the Dragons. If Rhaenyra learns that Rhaena has successfully claimed Sheepstealer, what is the logical next step? She doesn't celebrate for long. She starts planning. She begins asking where Rhaena should fly, what role Sheepstealer should play, and how this new dragon changes the balance of power against the Greens. Every commander would think the same way, because dragons are the single most valuable military advantage in Westeros. From a queen's perspective, another dragon rider isn't just family, it's another weapon that could win the war. But from Daemon's perspective, that's exactly the problem. For years, Daemon has lived in a world where Targaryens are measured by what they can contribute to the family, not by who they are as people. Sons become heirs, daughters become political marriages, dragon riders become generals. Every relationship is filtered through duty. Every act of love is tangled together with responsibility. Daemon knows better than anyone how easily family can disappear behind politics because he spent most of his own life doing exactly that. So when he looks at Rhaena, he isn't just seeing another dragon rider joining the Blacks. He's seeing his daughter standing on the edge of the same life that consumed him, a life where every achievement immediately becomes someone else's strategy. That's why Sheepstealer matters so much. This isn't a dragon raised inside the dragon pit under the watchful eyes of keepers and princes. Sheepstealer represents freedom in a way very few dragons do. While dragons don't recognize court politics, they don't care about succession disputes or royal decrees. They answer to instinct. They survive because they refuse to be controlled. That's what makes Sheepstealer's acceptance of Rhaena so symbolic. It's almost as if the dragon sees something in her that the people around her have overlooked for years. While everyone else focused on heirs, claimants, and future rulers, Sheepstealer chose the daughter who spent much of her life believing she had been left behind. In George R.R. Martin's world, dragons often become reflections of the people who ride them, and it's hard to ignore how perfectly those two stories align. There's another detail that deserves attention. Throughout House of the Dragon, we've repeatedly seen that the greatest threats to House Targaryen rarely come from outside enemies. They come from within the family itself. Ambition, fear, jealousy, and desperation have destroyed more Targaryens than foreign armies ever could. Daemon understands that reality better than almost anyone alive because he's lived through it. He's seen brothers turn against brothers. He's seen succession crises poison entire generations. He's watched love become secondary to power. So if he believes Rhaena has suddenly become one of the most valuable dragon riders in Westeros, he also understands the danger that comes with that title. The threat isn't just Aemond or Vhagar. The threat is every lord who begins calculating Rhaena's worth instead of seeing her as a person. And that's where Daemon's lie transforms from political strategy into parental instinct. Think about how different this is from the man we met at the beginning of the series. Early Daemon often chased glory for himself. He wanted recognition, respect, and the chance to prove that he belonged at the center of House Targaryen's story. But Episode 4 hints at something far more mature. For perhaps the first time, Daemon willingly steps into the background so someone else can have a future. He doesn't need the credit. He doesn't need anyone to understand why he made his decision. In fact, he may accept that history will judge him unfairly if it means Rhaena survives long enough to become the person she's meant to be. That idea becomes even more powerful when you remember how often the series contrasts destiny with choice. Many characters spend their lives believing prophecy controls everything. Others reject prophecy completely and trust only their own decisions. Daemon has always existed somewhere in the middle. He respects the mystery surrounding dragons, but he also believes people shape their own futures through action. Sheepstealer choosing Rhaena may feel destined, but protecting what comes next is still a choice. And Daemon chooses to protect it, even if it costs him the trust of the woman he loves. Here's another possibility that makes this theory even more compelling. What if Daemon notices something about Rhaena after she bonds with Sheepstealer that no one else notices? Confidence. For years, Rhaena has lived with the quiet pain of feeling incomplete in a family where dragons define identity. The moment Sheepstealer accepts her, that uncertainty begins to disappear. She doesn't just gain a dragon, she discovers who she is. Daemon sees that transformation immediately. He realizes that rushing her into war could destroy the very confidence she has finally found. Instead of allowing Rhaena to grow into her new role, the conflict would force her to become another frightened young rider thrown into battles against veterans and monsters like Vhagar. Daemon has lived that life. Why would he willingly send his daughter down the same path before she's ready? This also explains why he keeps the truth close to his chest instead of announcing it to the entire Black Council. Information is power, but timing is everything. Reveal Rhaena too early, and she becomes a target before she's prepared. Keep her hidden just a little longer, and the Blacks preserve one of their greatest advantages. Daemon has spent enough time fighting wars to understand that the element of surprise can change everything. His silence isn't cowardice, it's patience. And patience has never been a quality people associate with Daemon, which is exactly why this decision feels so important. Perhaps that's the greatest clue of all. The writers could have had Daemon tell the truth immediately if their only goal was to move the plot forward. Instead, they created a moment that forces us to question his motives. Whenever House of the Dragon lingers on a character's choice instead of its immediate consequences, it's usually preparing us for a much larger payoff later. Daemon's lie isn't simply a secret waiting to be exposed. It's a window into how much he's changed. For the first time in a very long time, his greatest concern isn't winning the next battle. It's making sure his daughter lives long enough to fight the battles that truly matter. And if that's the case, then this scene isn't about deception at all. It's about a father quietly choosing his daughter's future over his own reputation.